You talk too much, that's your problem. Every time you open your mouth about your plans, your goals, your dreams, you weaken them. Because what if I told you the fastest way to kill a big idea is to speak it out loud too soon? Now, I know what you're thinking, but shouldn't I tell people so they can support me? No. You're not looking for support, you're looking for permission. And let me tell you this, the world does not give permission to dreamers. It gives it to finishers, closers, doers. Every time you announce what you're going to do, your brain gets a little dopamine hit and confuses it for accomplishment. You feel proud, you feel motivated, but nothing has actually happened. You traded the high of applause for the reality of result. When you talk about your plans, your ideas, your ambitions, you're doing something most people don't realize. You're letting energy slip through your fingers. This isn't metaphor, it's biological, psychological, and deeply spiritual. When an idea first strikes your mind, it's pure. What could have exploded into action diffuses into empty air. The human brain is wired to reward us with feelings of accomplishment, not just for doing things, but even for talking about doing things. That's the trap. When you tell someone you're starting a business, writing a book, training for a marathon, your brain gives you a chemical reward, dopamine. It says, good job. But nothing has happened. No steps taken, no pages written, no work done, just the illusion of progress. You got the emotional paycheck without doing the labor. It is dangerous because that sense of fulfillment lowers your urgency. The hunger weakens. Your subconscious thinks it's already being recognized for the thing it hasn't even completed. The emotional reward comes too early, and suddenly the pressure to follow through fades. You don't feel the same fire the next day. The very act of speaking stole from your drive. There's also another side to this. When you share your plans, you open the door to feedback, and not the kind that helps. Opinions, questions, doubt, judgment. The world rarely responds with focused encouragement. It responds with fear, confusion, and skepticism. You say you're going to launch a new product, and someone says, that market's already saturated. You say you're quitting your job to start a company, and someone reminds you of your bills, your kids, your lack of experience. Suddenly, what felt clear and powerful becomes foggy, not because you were wrong, but because their fear infected your focus. Invited resistance that didn't need to exist. And the worst part, you gave them access to a dream that wasn't fully formed yet, like pulling a seed out of the soil before it's rooted. Ideas need time in the dark. They need silence, protection, nurturing. The early stage of a dream is fragile. It's not ready to withstand the winds of doubt, the weight of questions, or the shadow of someone else's limited thinking. But when you speak too early, you expose it, and sometimes that exposure is fatal. And even worse, you begin to perform your goal instead of doing it. You get addicted to the image of the thing rather than the process. Now you're on social media talking about what you're going to do. You're building anticipation without building substance. You want to be seen starting more than you want to finish. And that's a sickness. You become a marketer of plans instead of a master of execution. True power comes from holding that energy, not leaking it, letting it build like steam inside a machine. Focused, concentrated force. Imagine going 6 months without telling anyone what you're working on. No applause, no permission, just raw commitment every day. You'd be dangerous because no one could stop what they don't see. No one could slow down what they don't understand. You'd emerge not with a pitch, but with a product, not with an idea, but with result. You'd have all the pressure still in the tank, and you'd use it to push forward, not burn it off in conversations that go nowhere. Talking is easy. Talking is cheap. That's why everyone does it. But results, silence, relentless discipline behind closed doors, that's rare. And that's where real success lives. So every time you're tempted to tell someone what you're about to do, catch yourself. Ask why. Is it because you need encouragement, approval, recognition? Or are you trying to skip the hard part? The doing. Because in the end, nothing kills potential like premature exposure. And nothing builds momentum like quiet, focused work. Let the world find out after. Let them wonder how you moved so far, so fast, without saying a word. When no one knows what you're doing, you're protected. not just from distractions or interruptions, but from something more subtle and far more dangerous: interference from unseen forces. Every time you move in silence, you operate in a kind of stealth mode that shields you from the noise of the world. There's power in that invisibility. There's clarity, and above all, there's security. The moment you tell someone your plan, something shifts. You're no longer just a person with an internal drive. You've opened yourself up to the invisible field of expectations, opinions, and energy that others carry. You may not see it, but it's real. So when you share what you're doing, even casually, you're inviting those projections into your space. Sometimes it's subtle: a raised eyebrow, a hesitant pause, a quiet, "Are you sure?" But those moments plant seeds, seeds of uncertainty, seeds of hesitation, and often they begin to grow before you even realize it. Most people live in reaction, not creation. They respond to what already exists, and they're conditioned to maintain the status quo. So when you step outside that pattern, when you start to act with intention, they won't understand. And what people don't understand, they fear. They may not sabotage you out of malice, but their energy will carry the weight of disbelief. It hangs in the air. You feel it in their words, their tone, even in their silence. And all of that, if you're not prepared, can distort your vision. But when no one knows what you're doing, none of that touches you. You move untouched by expectation, unaffected by doubt. You're in a vacuum of pure intention. Your actions are clean, your decisions are yours, and your mind is sharp. There's no second guessing caused by someone else's worldview colliding with your path. There's just the work, the mission, the next step. There is also protection from envy. Not everyone will wish you well. Some people will smile to your face and quietly hope you fail, not because they hate you, but because your courage reminds them of their own inaction. Your progress becomes a mirror they don't want to look into, so they talk, they question, they mock, and if they can't slow you down directly, they'll try to cast shadows on your light in subtler ways. Doubt, sarcasm, passive-aggressive advice. But if they don't know what you're doing, they can't touch it. They can't aim at what they can't see. This is why those who rise far often seem to appear out of nowhere. That's not luck or coincidence. That's design. They chose silence over spectacle. They didn't announce every move. They gave the world results, not updates. There's also a deep psychological benefit to this silence. When no one is watching, you remove the weight of performance. You're not acting for approval. You're not pretending to be further along than you are. You're not managing anyone's expectations but your own. That gives you space to fail, to learn, to experiment. That gives you freedom, and freedom is where growth accelerates. Operating quietly also strengthens your self-trust. When you keep things to yourself, you begin to rely more on your own judgment. You stop outsourcing your confidence. You stop needing consensus. You build an inner authority that doesn't shake when others don't understand. That's rare, and it's powerful. So when you choose not to tell people what you do, you're not being secretive. You're being strategic. You're preserving your energy. You're avoiding invisible resistance. You're building behind the scenes while others burn out on the stage. The world doesn't need to see the blueprint. It only needs to see the finished structure, and by then it'll be too late for anyone to stop it. History is magnetic. There is something undeniably powerful about a person who doesn't explain themselves. Someone who moves with purpose but says little. The mind naturally wants to solve puzzles, to fill in the blanks, to understand what it cannot see. So when you don't reveal everything you're doing, people become curious. That curiosity creates attention, and attention, when it's earned through presence rather than noise, is one of the most potent forms of influence. The more you talk about what you're doing, the more ordinary you become. Every word, every explanation, every detail chips away at the enigma. It reduces your presence to something that can be categorized, judged, and filed away. But when you say less, when you let your work, your actions, and your progress speak without commentary, you give people no easy way to define you. That unsettles them. It challenges their mental framework. And that tension keeps their attention. When you're unpredictable, you become uncontainable. People can't label you, so they can't limit you. They're forced to observe instead of assume. That's when influence begins, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're operating from a level they can't quite grasp. You're not playing the same game they are. You're not driven by applause, validation, or recognition. You're moved by a quiet, internal fire. And that silence, that lack of explanation, becomes the loudest message of all. People will begin to ask questions, and those questions are far more valuable than statements. What is he working on? How did she pull that off? Where is this going? Questions open doors. They create stories in the minds of others. And if you keep your process hidden long enough, those stories grow into myths. You stop being a person in progress and start becoming a force with momentum. You shift from someone who talks to someone who delivers. And when you do deliver, when results appear without the build-up, they hit harder. They command respect, not just attention. Mystery also keeps your competitors off balance. In a world obsessed with oversharing, your silence is strategic warfare. While others are broadcasting every idea before it's ready, you're quietly building in the dark. You're free to pivot without explanation, evolve without scrutiny, and win without resistance. People can't copy what they can't see. They can't sabotage what they can't predict. And they can't compete with the strategy they don't understand. There's a certain peace that comes with being unknown. No pressure to perform, no expectations to live up to, no image to maintain. Just the work, just the process, just the internal satisfaction of knowing that you're moving forward, not because anyone sees it, but because you refuse to stop. And ironically, the more you live in that private power, the more the world starts to notice. Not because you asked for it, but because true power leaves it. And it doesn't need to announce itself. Those who command the most influence rarely do so with their mouths. They do it with presence, with consistency, with results that arrive unannounced. The world is full of talkers, explainers, self-promoters, but very few people walk in silence and let their life speak for them. Very few are willing to endure the quiet grind without the dopamine hit of recognition. But those who are, that rare few, build something that lasts. They build mystery, and with mystery comes control. Control of your narrative, control of your energy, control of your environment. Because when you're not busy explaining your every move, you're free to make your next one without interference. You're not held hostage by your last announcement. You're not boxed in by the image you've sold to others. You're fluid, you're dangerous, you're impossible to pin down. And that's what makes you powerful. There is no need to explain, no need to prove, no need to seek approval. Because the less you say, the more people want to know. The less you reveal, the more they pay attention. And the less you perform, the more they believe in your substance. So here's your challenge. For the next 90 days, tell no one what you're working on. Let your silence build your power. Let your results make the noise. And if you're bold enough, journal the results. Watch how the energy shifts. Revelation feels good. It's human nature to want to be seen, to be recognized, to have others affirm that you're on the right path. But that desire, if left unchecked, becomes a trap. One that steals your focus, dilutes your power, and shifts your center of gravity from within to without. When you start relying on external validation to stay motivated, you give away control of your mission. You begin chasing applause instead of results. The moment you share your goals with someone, even with good intentions, you invite their opinion into your inner world. You want them to be impressed, to be inspired, to say, "That's amazing." And if they don't, if their response is lukewarm or skeptical, it shakes you. Not because their words carry truth, but because you were hoping to borrow their belief when yours wasn't strong enough yet. That's the trap. When you speak your goal out loud and someone doesn't reflect excitement back, it plants doubt. Where there was momentum, that need for approval becomes addictive. You start checking in on people's reactions, adjusting your words, tailoring your updates, and before long, you're not even building the thing for yourself anymore. You're building it to keep others interested. You become an actor in your own process, performing progress instead of making it. You post about working late or grinding in silence while actively seeking recognition for doing so. The irony is painful. You start doing the work for applause, not impact. And in that shift, your original purpose gets lost. You lose time trying to convince others. You lose energy managing perceptions. You lose direction responding to every comment, every bit of unsolicited advice. Because once you've spoken your goal out loud, it doesn't just belong to you anymore. It belongs to everyone you told. Their expectations, their hopes, even their doubts now live inside your mind, and you start to carry them whether you want to or not. You become afraid to pivot, afraid to admit you changed your mind, afraid to start over, not because you don't believe in your new direction, but because you fear what others will think. You said you were going one way, now you're changing course. What will they say? What will they think? And just like that, your decisions are no longer based on strategy or intuition, they're based on image. That's the cost of validation. Binds you to a version of yourself that was never allowed to evolve freely. People often mistake validation for support, but support builds you quietly while validation demands something loud in return. True support respects your silence. It doesn't require constant updates or explanations. It trusts the process even when it can't see the outcome. Validation, on the other hand, wants to be fed. It wants progress reports, success stories, something to clap for. And when you don't deliver quickly enough, the applause stops, the interest fades, and you're left wondering where all that borrowed confidence went. The deeper problem is that when you build for validation, you build with fear as the foundation. Fear of being wrong, fear of being misunderstood, fear of disappointing those who cheered for you too early. And fear creates hesitation. It makes you second-guess your gut. It makes you slow down when you should speed up, or speed up when you should slow down. It clouds your vision. It turns your mission into a performance. Real power doesn't come from being seen. It comes from knowing you're doing the right thing even when no one is watching. It comes from building something in silence, not for recognition, but because it matters to you. It's quiet, internal, and unshakable. When your fuel comes from within, you don't stop when applause stops. You don't shift direction just because someone doesn't get it. You don't need the noise to validate your next move. The moment you stop seeking validation, you free yourself. You start moving cleaner, sharper, faster. You start creating from clarity, not confusion, and everything changes. You stop asking for permission. You stop performing, and you finally start building with pure, undiluted intention. Results speak a language no one can argue with. They don't need introduction, explanation, or justification. They don't care about opinions or predictions. They exist, they show, and they prove. In a world saturated with noise, status updates, future promises, inflated declarations, results remain the only form of communication that carries undeniable weight. Talk can be questioned, doubted, even ignored, but results confront reality head-on. They're not about what might happen. They are what has happened. When you let results do the talking, you bypass resistance. You skip the debates, the doubts, the subtle discouragements, because there's nothing to argue with. A person can doubt your vision, but they can't deny your output. They can disagree with your plan, but they can't dispute the fact that you got it done. That's the power of results. They remove speculation. They replace theory with truth. Many people waste time trying to convince others they're on the right path. They explain, they defend, they overexpress what they're going to do and why. But those words don't build anything. They don't change your bank account. They don't make your body stronger. They don't launch your product, close your deal, or build your legacy. And yet, people stay stuck in performance mode, constantly seeking understanding, often from people who aren't qualified to give it, people who haven't built anything themselves, who don't have the vision, the discipline, or the courage to do what you're trying to do. So instead of building, you explain. Instead of executing, you announce, and the results never come. The people who achieve quietly understand something vital. When you focus fully on the work, the results will eventually force the recognition. It may not be instant, it may not come with applause, but it comes with something deeper, respect. Because people eventually notice what cannot be ignored. A body transformed, a business built, a book published, a skill mastered. The evidence becomes impossible to overlook, and it demands respect without ever asking for it. It's not loud, but it's undeniable. Results also create trust, not just from others, but within yourself. Every time you follow through, every time you complete, you send a message to your own subconscious: I finish what I start. That message is powerful. It builds confidence, not the kind that wavers with public approval, but the kind that roots itself in proof. You don't need to hype yourself up or convince yourself that you're capable. You have evidence. That evidence becomes the foundation of your next level. It fuels your growth with certainty, not wishful thinking. People forget that confidence isn't a personality trait. It's a byproduct of consistency. The more you execute, the more you build. The more you build, the more you trust yourself. And the more you trust yourself, the less you need anyone else to believe in you. That's freedom, that's clarity, and it all comes from doing the work instead of talking about it. In a way, chasing recognition before results is a form of procrastination. It feels like progress, it feels like you're moving, but it's just motion without impact. When you let your results come first, everything shifts. You reverse the sequence. Instead of saying, "Look what I'm going to do," you show them, "This is what I've done." And that shift earns respect faster than 100 promises ever could. There's also something incredibly satisfying about doing it quietly, not for secrecy, not out of fear, but because you know the work matters more than the announcement. You're not looking to impress anyone with potential. You're looking to impress yourself with proof. You start to crave completion more than praise. You start to love the silence, the process, the grind, because you know what's coming. Not maybes, not intentions, just results. The only thing that matters. And when the results show up, they carry all the weight you used to try to create with words. They validate the struggle, the sacrifice, the discipline. They tell the whole story without needing a single explanation. Your goals are not casual thoughts. They are sacred territory. They represent the future you haven't stepped into yet. The version of yourself you're building in silence. The life that hasn't been seen by anyone, not even you, fully. Talking about your goals before they're fully formed is like placing a fragile seedling under harsh light. It doesn't help it grow. It kills its chance before it even starts. The goal, especially in its early stages, is delicate. It's still being shaped. You're still feeling it out, clarifying the vision, discovering what it's going to require of you. That process is deeply personal. It demands space, reflection, and inner dialogue. The more you talk about it, the more your mind stops building and starts performing. It stops being honest and starts trying to impress. You start thinking about how your goal sounds to others, how it looks from the outside, whether people will believe in it, whether they'll approve of it. And in that subtle shift, your goal stops being yours. It becomes a story for others, a concept tailored for external consumption. But goals aren't born to be consumed. They're born to be achieved. And achievement takes focus, undiluted, uninterrupted focus. When you expose your goal too early, you don't just invite attention, you invite opinions, doubt, projections, other people's fears disguised as advice. And once those voices get into your head, they're hard to shake. They take up energy, they slow you down. You might even start adjusting your path to fit someone else's expectation, forgetting that they don't have to walk the road you're building, you do. It's also easy to confuse speaking about a goal with working on it, but those are two very different things. Speaking gives you a momentary sense of progress, a feeling of movement without the substance. It's satisfying, but it's empty. When your goal is truly sacred to you, you begin to understand that silence isn't just a strategy, it's a form of respect. You don't casually toss something valuable into the wind. You keep it close. You honor it with your discipline. You treat it like something fragile that will grow only if given the right environment. That environment is internal. It's not a public arena. It's not social media. It's not a room full of people asking you for updates. It's solitude. It's repetition. It's discipline when no one's watching. That's where a goal becomes real. That's where you start to embody the kind of person capable of achieving it, not through words, but through consistent private action. There's also power in withholding. When you don't tell the world what you're working on, you keep the energy inside. You build pressure, that pressure becomes momentum. It sharpens your focus. It fuels your creativity. You don't waste time or attention managing expectations. You don't get distracted by applause or discouraged by skepticism. You stay locked in. Your goal becomes your secret weapon, your internal compass, your private battlefield. And because you've kept it sacred, it grows stronger. It becomes more defined. The more you work in silence, the more clarity you gain. You see the weaknesses, the necessary sacrifices, the real timeline. You face the truth of what it will take. And without the noise of external opinion, you make cleaner decisions. You adapt faster. You move with precision. Then when the time comes, the results speak loudly, but by that point you don't need them to, because the goal isn't about proving anything anymore, it's about completing something you deeply committed to. The fulfillment doesn't come from recognition, but from knowing that you kept something sacred long enough to bring it fully to life. That kind of silence, that kind of discipline is rare. Most people don't keep their goals sacred. They spend their energy telling the world what they're about to do, and then they wonder why they run out of steam before they even start. But those who protect their goals with intention and silence build something far more powerful. Not just success, but character. Not just progress, but mastery. And that can never be taken away. So keep quiet. Not because you're afraid, because you're focused. Not because you're hiding, because you're building. Let others chase attention. Let them burn their energy trying to be seen. You don't need to be seen. You need to be ready. Because when it's time, when the work is done, when the results are undeniable, you won't have to explain a thing. The world will see. The world will know. Not because you told them, borrowed because you showed them. Until then, protect your vision, respect your energy, guard your silence, and remember this: real power doesn't speak, it moves.